a shining new era. Therefore, in 1858, the 26-year-old Prince Mustafa succeeded to the throne of the realm at peace with its neighbours and with itself. The occasion was elaborate and glorious, full of speeches proclaiming the wisdom of the new Sultan's father and the glorious rule of the rejuvenated Sultanate. The only cloud was the absence of Princess Scheherazade. In truth, Prince Mustafa's sister received, at the instructions of the Grand Vizierate, a generous cash lump sum and annual stipend upon his coronation, but was politely asked not to attend the event itself. Sultan Mustafa quickly earned a reputation as a garrulous and cheery monarch. Whilst already a large man, he quickly grew several sizes as he indulged a bit too much in his appetite for fine foods. Yet, even the return of the harem and the rich gowns and turbans of the old Sultanate could dim the people's love for their new ruler. Postscript. A curious truth, Sultan Mehmed was an excellent ruler, but austere and distant. He was universally respected but not loved. Mustafa, on the other hand, is dissolute and disinterested, but is almost unfailingly loved by his people. Curious. Much of the day-to-day operations of the Sultanate fell to the Grand Vizier, Mehmed Pasha, who had served Sultan Mehmed faithfully in his final days as a ruler. Many of the old policies continued, yet Sultan Mustafa quickly made a point of embarking on a grandeur projects to demonstrate the Ottoman prowess and ingenuity. Amongst these projects were the massive fortifications that now straddle either end of the Dardanelles, the construction of brand new warships of the Sultanate Navy, and the extensive Gardens of Paradise initiatives where technology brought dearly from the covenant of the enlightened sources were used to green the desert and establish new and expansive cities throughout the Sultanate. The process, Sultan Mustafa made quite the name for himself. He was touted in the press as a liberal reformer, feted worldwide for his great building projects, and lavished with praise at home and abroad. He was dubbed by admirers as Sultan Mustafa the Golden, although in private his advisers began to doubt the wisdom of this public display of largesse. The Sultan's projects quickly exceeded the nation's ability to pay them. Sultan Mustafa the Golden-Plated. Grand Vizier Pasha was and remains a cynical rationalist. Unfailing calculating, Pasha weighs every option with his finely tuned mind to determine the best course of action at each step. Nonetheless, he is a servant and not a ruler, and is dedicated to the furthering of the Sultanate's prosperity. It was Pasha who masterminded the exclusion of Princess Scheherazade from the succession, doubting her commitment to traditional Ottoman values. And it was Pasha who realized that many of the Sultan's grand vision, the Grand Vizier, was also the man who ensured the stability of a sublime treasury. As the Sultan's vanity projects took their toll, new financial measures were introduced to raise more revenue, whilst in secret Pasha arranged loans from various sources. Amongst his highest-ranking officials, Sultan Mustafa was soon referred to as the Golden-Plated. A play upon the popular name, Mustafa the Golden. It is clear that such whispers and rumours eventually reached the Sultan's ears, for he became more insecure even as the further praise was heaped upon him for his national projects. It was around this time that Sirkan Dylan Callas came into contact with the Sultan for the first time. The Greek insurrection. Greece is a stubborn and fractions region within the Sultan. Its ancient history and legacy of resistance inspires certain sections of European history. Nations seeking to embarrass the Sultanate frequently take up the cause of Greek independence when it suits their interests. Sultan Mustafa's reign has seen much investment in Greece, in an effort to quite openly buy the loyalty of his Greek subjects. Concessions and reforms have granted further autonomy to the Greek people, At several points, a general amnesty has been offered to Greek fighters holed up in the mountains, an innovation in Sultanate policy and an option which, even the Sultan's father, never considered. Nonetheless, there are those too stubborn or too crazed to halt their struggle, and as we all know, it is these poor souls where the taint of the hex calls most strongly. I understand you are more than familiar with the following details, Isakaran, but allow me to emphasize certain aspects to more fully illustrate our position. As you know, it was in 1867 the Greek rebels were identified using hex weaponry during an attack on the Erdene. While conducting observance in the region, Circumcallus was in position to save a young man from a horrific fate during the attack. In this selfless act, Callus won the gratitude of a young man's father, an influential figure with a sublime port. Circumcallus was summoned to Istanbul to meet with the Sultan the following month. And it is thanks to Callus' persuasive words and sharp wit that we now enjoy a level of access with an open influence in the Sultanate. The blessed and golden Sultan Mustafa I. Callus explained to Sultan Mustafa the existence of two great forces at work upon the world, the divine whom we refer to as the Orshad, and the antagonist referred in our faith as the Hex. Callus presented these truths as but another layer of revelation upon existing faiths, as to a certain extent they are. And for his eager listener, explained that only with the aid of all-powerful mortals could the Orshad vanquish the Hex and usher in a new age. Mustafa, in his narrative, an opportunity to exceed his father's legacy, and since that time has launched himself wholeheartedly in a new direction. No longer will his name be glorified for his largesse. It will also be remembered for his devotion and piety. With support of the Sultan, the order was able to move freely throughout the Sultanate. Since our last report, I can confirm that the entire Janissary Corps of the Sultanate army is now undergoing Specker training. Those who resist have been quietly removed to the other corps within the army. At present, 3 regiments of Specker are now at full strength and publicly recognized as the new face of a divine corps within the army. Mimreg have been replaced in key positions throughout the remaining arms of the Ottoman military to provide oversight and identify those receptive to our teachings. The Bastion armature continues to grow up apace, and other members of the congregation have been placed in positions of authority to ensure further marginalization of oppressed groups and root out the hex taint wherever it is found, or could potentially take root. The harsh penal code of the Sultanate has been incredibly useful in this project. Problems in the Sublime Port. These successes have brought at a price, however. While our faith is openly tolerated within the cities and the Sultan's personal guard, including 2 of our core Korali, we are still viewed with suspicion and resentment by those who would crave such influence for themselves. We have been denied leadership in the religious council, and our influence in civil government has only been secured in a few places where the Sultan's influence has been keenly felt, or where we have had sympathizers within the government already. Indeed, our presence here, whilst growing, remains constrained. It would not be impossible for a determined foe to disentangle us from our position and overturn all we have built. Our most dedicated opponent at present is the Grand Vizier himself. As I explained, the Grand Vizier is a cynical man and a rationalist. The logic of our mission here does not sit easy with his mind, especially weighing the potential damage we might cause to the realm with our rhetoric and policies. A viewpoint I understand, yet cannot condone, given the true nature of the threat posed by the Hex. The Grand Vizier, Pasha, who has continued to frustrate some of our most dramatic reform proposals, he blocked our latest request for parity in the religious councils of the Sultanate, and frustrated careful plans to place order observers within the halls of each of the emirs and satraps, who govern the outer provinces of the Sultan's domain. At last, our budgetary request to Sublime Treasury was also entangled in bureaucracy for almost 6 months, a fact which cost us dear. That said, it was our influence with the Sultan that prevented proposal from Pasha that would have gifted us new headquarters beyond the Topkapi Palace, inevitably isolating us from the Sublime Porte. The Grand Vizier's bureaucratic obstructions are motivated by equal parts self-interest and self-preservation. I believe without the controlling hand on the Sultan's actions, Pasha fears he will be unable to moderate the Sultan's more excessive tendencies. Pasha also worries that the national interest is being suborned to the interests of a foreign cult, which is what he publicly claims when mustering opposition to us amongst the civil service. There is, however, another reason why I have recently discovered. The sign of 40. A quick survey of the Grand Vizier's chambers was conducted 3 nights ago by specially selected speaker on my orders. The 2 managed to infiltrate the wing of the palace undisturbed and returned with copies of a few of his papers. These were not particularly illuminating, apart from the symbol found etched into the corner, 4 lines enclosing 4 intersecting circles. This symbol can be found all across the Sultanate, branded upon individuals or goods as well as locations. It is a sign of 40, an allusion to the 40 Thieves of legend, and a symbol of the most organized and dangerous criminal fraternity in the world, the House of Gold. Written down, it is strange to imagine how much fear that name invokes amongst the ordinary populace. In fact, the house is rarely named in full, simply called the Thieves or the Snatchers, or other such metaphors when necessary. The House of Gold began as narcotic smugglers, opium in particular, but have long since expanded into pretty much every single aspect of corruption. This has brought their thief kings incredible wealth and influence. The least unsavory of their operations is the lending of money to wealthy clients who have exhausted other options, and it was upon just a transaction that this symbol was found in the Grand Vizier's office. The Sea of Ships. For much of its history, a large part of Sultanate territory has been led by the position of the Kapitan Pasha, Commander-in-Chief of both the Navy and now the emerging Air Force too. Sultanate air power is a distinct element within the Navy and provides air support to the modern groups of Gardens of Paradise, Sultanate naval battle groups with aging engine nacelles purchased from the Crown. The Sultanate Navy was unremarkable indeed. Under the Sultan's instructions, this changed as engineers integrated magnetic impeller technologies from the Covenant of the Enlightened. Now the Sultanate vessels, such as those from Egypt and Greece, have a reputation for unmatched speed and maneuverability, though preferring lighter craft such as fast cruisers, destroyers, and battle cruisers. The Sultanate used these advanced vessels to rapidly respond to threats and take advantage to a changing global situation. With the ancestral naval and air command in the Turkish city of Karamasad, on the Sea of Mara, the Sultanate has collectively had a long naval tradition and has emerged victorious from many conflicts around the globe. Under this new Sultan, the military budget has increased 12-fold, and it now makes use of the most of the Marmara Sea as a massive fleet manufacture, training and staging area. The Propontis region's critical nature to Sultanate's military power cannot be underestimated. Indeed, the great powers all recognize that a move against the Sultanate would require massive initial strike against the Marmara Basin. Though the Crown favours a surface polluting of the waterways themselves, the Commonwealth believes that skillful deployment of submersibles through the Bosphorus would achieve great success, though certainly any attack would wreak a terrible loss of life if successful. It is more dispassionate military minds in the Covenant of the Enlightened who propose the most terrifyingly elegant yet devastating solution: the detonation of a sizable atomic device in the North Anatolian fault, which lies upon the Propontis. Even naturally This geological feature has triggered many major earthquakes in recent years. The detonation of such a device would, in an instant, destroy not only the military heart of Sultanate, but would annihilate Istanbul and its political and religious centres too. Both the Sublime Porte and its allies have dedicated significant resources of their own to counter such a threat. Postscript. Whether the absence of such an attack to date would more of the success of these agencies, or rather the lack of resolve by the great powers, remains to be unseen. Only owing gold to the House of Gold. With expenditures such as the vast military program, I have been aware for a while that the Sublime Porte's finances were not as strong as they had been. But I had not realized quite how poor they were. In order to finance the Sultan's lifestyle and keep him malleable, the Grand Vizier had also quadrupled the personal expenditure of the court. At the same time, of course, the government was ploughing money into the Sultan's projects, like the Gardens of Paradise, to develop the Sultanate and glorify its achievements. After the civil unrest Sultan Mehmed had endured from heavily taxing Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Persia, the Grand Vizier chose instead to finance much of this new extravagance with loans. Eventually, he had exhausted all reputable sources of money and turned to the House of Gold. It appears that, in the last few months, the House of Gold has been buying up all the Sultan's debts and consolidating them in their own hand. Quite why remains something of a mystery, but I can only surmise that the thief kings in charge wish to ensure that the Sultanate is wholly indebted to them, and can therefore expect concessions and favours in their own line of work. The House of Gold is something of an institution amongst the populace of the Sultanate, and to move against it openly would likely create a crisis the government is unwilling to contemplate. The Grand Vizier has thus far managed to keep the uncomfortable truth of the government's financial troubles out from the public eye. It is only a matter of time, however, before the story emerges into the public arena. Such scandal would have far-reaching consequences, not all of them beneficial for us. Whilst the revelations would certainly end the Grand Vizier's career and remove him as an obstacle, it would also rebound on the Sultan himself. Public confidence in his reign would likely collapse, and since the toleration of the order in some ways rely on his good name, we would undoubtedly suffer in the fallout. The worst case scenario could see the Sultan forced to abdicate, closing the Sublime Porte off to us and threatening to destabilize the entire Sultanate as different claimants fought for the throne. The looming threat in such a scenario would be the return of the exiled princess. The Crimson League. Ever since the coronation of Sultan Mustafa, Princess Scheherazade has kept herself amused using the funds she received from the government of her brother to continue her research as a member of the Covenant of the Enlightened. She was instrumental in funding and developing several Covenant projects and served as the Covenant ambassador to several capitals during the early years of her brother's reign. Exactly what role she played in the Covenant's schism is unclear, as is our understanding of the event. In any case, her talents as both a leader and a strategist called her to explore other avenues for profit and adventure, and she expanding her own Promethean complex into a veritable armory, developing many different advanced weapons for sale to the great powers or for use of the enlightened forces. Her contact with the Covenant's War Master Schneider fostered an interest in military activities and the romance of mercenary life. It is no surprise that the princess established her own mercenary outfit early in the Covenant career. Postscript. We believe Princess is operating from somewhere in Morocco. Although it is pure conjecture, I would ask that we consider a detachment of Aeopetus or Astria to investigate. The Crimson League is dismissed as a vanity project, as far as I gather, amongst the halls of power, staffed uniformly by noble adventurers and outlandish aristocrats. The organization has nonetheless developed a reputation amongst certain quarters as a highly effective. Reports garnered from the operational activities indicate a technologically advanced force of unique aerial vehicles and experienced crews capable of working together despite their flamboyant personalities and wreaking havoc in their wake. Postscript. A contract with the Crimson League can run into expense of hundreds of thousands in sterling, or so I am told. The Crimson League has become a thorn in the side of Sublime Port, frequently striking out received threats to the Sultanate without the government's blessing at the whim of the exiled princess, and frequently making diplomatic nuisance of themselves. There is a more worrying side to these concerns, however. If the Sultan were to fall, would his infant son be able to rally the military to his side against the might of the House of Gold, and would the exiled princess simply sit out and allow her nephew to succeed to the throne that she believes is rightfully hers? And if she did intervene, would she bring the Crimson League with her? Postscript. I believe a comparison of Commonwealth's Black Wolf and his proximity to the Tsar's court would be apt here. As you can see, I hope you will forgive the time it has taken to get here. The order faces a crossroad here in the Sultanate. We have built up an excellent base of operations here, and our influence is expanding rapidly. The military potential alone of our alliance with the Sultanate cannot be overstated. However, all our progress could be undone in the next few years if we cannot manage the turmoil to come. The information about the Sultan's debts could be used as leverage to the Grand Vizier out of office, or at least make him more compliant to our demands in the future. However, using this knowledge without due care could bring about the very scandal we wish to prevent. The wrong word to the wrong person could bring our position crashing down. On the other hand, failing to act to prevent the crisis, either by bailing out the Sultan with our own funds or somehow invigilating ourselves into the Vizier's good graces, could put us in a more perilous position if the secret does break. Postscript. Do we have ready access to that amount? Could we source it from our union holdings? And in the worst case scenario, in the event of the scandal precipitating a succession crisis, who do we support? The disposed Sultan, his infant son, Prince Murad, or such decisions are far too complex to be taken here. Which brings me to my final words. I ask you, I implore you, for good of our order, to convene a council as soon as possible to discuss the information I have sent you. I understand that the expectation is that I will be able to make such decisions on my own with the guidance of the core Korali. But in this instance, I desire the advice and guidance of more experienced voices. If at all possible, a gift from yourselves would help greatly in easing the mind of us here in the Levant.